Okay, so we're going to move on to our next two speakers now. We've got a joint presentation, and this is Alex Martin-Carey and Nicola Ballantine, and they're going to be presenting on engaging schools, colleges, and community learners via online platforms. So over to you, Alex.
Great, thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, so hi, I'm Alex, and I work in the Partnership Development Office in the Outreach team. My role is predominantly around developing outreach curriculum and working with academics and students, PhD students, to develop academic outreach. And my colleague Nicola, who's going to present some of this as well, works in our schools outreach team. So she's responsible for developing relationships with schools and teachers, and so has a lot to contribute. What we're hoping to do, there's a lot more information on these slides than hopefully we'll talk about, but it's just to give you an impression of what's going on in schools at the moment and colleges, and a little bit of information about our adult learners, and also to sort of talk about what we've been doing over the last 6 months in terms of online learning that has worked, and hopefully spark a few ideas for those of you thinking, able to think outside of the immediate needs of your own students, to think about kind of applicants and potential school students coming through. So just a reminder, I won't read through all of this, but a reminder that we at Kent have kind of formal agreements with over 100 schools in the area. Mostly schools identified as having larger proportions of disadvantaged students, and we have a commitment to working with those students. There's a kind of financial commitment to that, and we have access and participation agreement commitments to working with those schools and to trying to widen the diversity of our student body. So even though we're all kind of under these monumental efforts in the university at the moment, that we've been hearing about these fantastic initiatives, we still have to remember that we have this obligation to do this work. And from the central outreach team, we want to kind of make that as possible for you in the academic schools as possible. So hopefully this will help a little bit. So Nicola, I'm going to hand over to Nicola for a second now, just to talk about what are the challenges of online learning from a school's perspective.
Yeah, so one of the major challenges we've found with online learning is that students might not have access to a device at home to engage with those online resources, because they'll be using it for work, or there might just not be a device in the household that is suitable. Some of the schools have provided some of their most disadvantaged students with laptops to try and mitigate this problem. However, obviously motivating students to participate in online learning still remains low due to things like digital fatigue. Also, current restrictions have meant that zooming into the classroom might be a feasible option, but we found that this still causes some issues if you're trying to work with a more targeted group, as they're being pulled from different classes or tutor groups. This is due to a number of reasons, really, including timetabling problems, as traditional kind of PHE lessons and assembly have been removed in certain schools. And also spaces where additional sessions may have usually been run, such as in the library and private study areas, are now being used for lessons. Schools are increasingly operating within bubble systems, meaning that even though you'd previously be able to bring different groups of students together, this is now not possible. And lastly, we found that communication with previously engaged schools has been much more difficult, where teachers' workloads have increased substantially, and obviously their priorities have changed due to focusing on things like student absences and trying to adapt to the changing situation. In addition, obviously, ensuring online resources reach the correct group of students relies on that effective communication. For example, if a specific project is subject-based, communication is really key to make sure that reaches the subject teacher and targeted group that it's been designed for, something that's obviously much harder to control in a completely online environment.
So I think the sort of the long and the short of it is that that schools are operating under very similar pressures to the university. If not kind of more restricted, because of the large numbers of students that they have, and the fact that they have to be physically present all the time. But it's not all doom and gloom. We have managed to do a lot of different things over the last 6 months, and we've got kind of 2 or 3 approaches that we want to share with you about things that work really well. The first approach is about kind of these small scale targeted interventions. As Nicola said, those are a bit challenging at the moment, where you might bring students out of different groups or different classes. But if you can harness a group that is together already, like a subject group, if you can harness a group that will interact with you outside of school time, and you can get support from schools to do that, then these kind of interventions can work really well. What we've seen working particularly effectively, we've been working over a sustained period of time with groups of Year 13 students at current applicants to the university on an academic mentoring programme. They've got a designated time within their school day to do this. They're able to go home to access their own devices, and the school are loaning devices to those who can't, who don't have their own. They then are able to log onto a Zoom call, and they then go into breakout rooms with postgraduates from Kent, who take them through revision sessions, who are working on coursework with them, and we have a kind of to and fro relationship with teachers and students to develop specific activities that are going to help them with their actual needs, catching up on missed work, thinking about their applications to university, thinking about their exams. And this kind of relationship building is really great for the students, boosting their confidence, brilliant experience for our students. And also it's kind of building those soft links with us that hopefully will encourage them to think about coming to Kent as well. So this kind of very targeted work is, I think, one way to go, and we can do that outside of the subject parameters as well. And we've done that with some more innovative things around creative writing. We've run an online games club, we've run an online debating club, and these kind of small group interventions are effective, but you need to have a very specific focus and a very specific idea of how logistically that's going to work, and really good support and communication with the schools. The other approach we've really been using is much larger scale. So Nicola is going to talk you through this.
Yeah, so just following on with what Alex mentioned, we have found there has been some success with large group activities where they've been in a pre-prepared format. These include sessions such as Da Vinci, which we run for Year 7 and 8 students. It includes like a competition element where they have to complete 3 art-based challenges and submit these to the school. Schools have found this really, really easy to run with their large year groups due to the flexibility of the session being facilitated in either a teacher-led or self-guided way as homework. Another example is our Sixth Form Foundations module, where we have both online and physical resources. We send printed booklets to the school in advance of the session, and the teacher can then play the online videos and resources to the class to aid them with that booklet work. Both of these examples, as I said, worked really well as teachers can monitor the engagement of students through those physical resources, and it is really easy to facilitate. As I mentioned earlier, obviously mixing classes can be more difficult and group work may be restricted, so it's just about keeping this in mind when thinking about large scale activities.
And finally, thinking about adult learners, we run an adult access course at Kent, and there's usually kind of community elements to that. Engaging adults outside of the university has been really challenging. Adults in particular might suffer from low levels of digital literacy, actually our ability to kind of access online resources, even if they have the technology to do that. So flexibility is really key to working with adults outside of the university. But on the plus side, I think adults who are motivated to learn are actually able to access a wider range of resources. They're able to develop these key digital skills that they might need if they are going to progress to university, and also kind of communicating with them, meeting with them, all of these things which are more challenging for adult learners because they may have a wider range of commitments, caring responsibilities, employment, etc. Those sorts of things are much easier in an online environment, and so we kind of see some benefits in terms of engagement and sustainability. And so if you're thinking about
1.5 minutes left.
Okay, if you're thinking about working with adults, I think trying to connect through existing partners is a really key way to approach that. So I think we'll just zoom through this one. We've tried a lot of different platforms, and a lot of this has been covered in what's been said already. But it is really important to say that schools are using a variety of different platforms. Zoom has been our most effective one. Teams has caused a lot of challenges, but some schools are using other things like Blackboard or Google Meet. So it is a bit challenging to work out what is the best format, and I think flexibility is really key. And I also want to remind you, and then this will be in the slides that Phil will send out, that students at schools are children, and we need to be aware of that in the way that we interact with them. In this online environment, it's easy to forget that safeguarding is still a really key issue, and we need to interact with children online in the way that we would in a face-to-face environment. So there's some key guidance there. But if you have questions about this, please do contact us and ask us, because actually we really need to make sure that we're continuing to kind of operate in an effective safeguarding way, even online. And so finally, the current need in schools, we've sort of covered this a bit, but I'm going to let Nicola finish up on this, and just to say that if you want to ask us questions about this, please do contact us, and we really want to help with your programs. But Nicola, go for it.
Yeah, so really just the key words there, flexibility and being open-minded. Obviously, being able to adapt what platforms you use with online resources is also really, really helpful. And just kind of understanding the priorities and the shift in schools, with being very much focused on trying to adapt to this changing situation. So, yeah.
That's it. That's us.
Thank you so much. I think that the flexibility point actually sums up what we've all had to kind of to be over the pandemic, and yeah, I think it sums it up very nicely. Thank you so much to both of you for that. That was really interesting. Dan, have there been any comments in the chat?
Lots of comments, but no questions that I can see, unless I've missed anything obvious. I have a question though, if we have time.
Please do, Dan.
Really just around whether we risk making assumptions about the digital skills that our students are coming to university with, and whether institutionally or sector-wide, perhaps universities make assumptions that all of our students are digitally literate and able to engage with the online activities and materials that we provide for them. And what your thoughts are on that?
I think obviously we do risk making assumptions. I definitely think the point about adult learners is important, and obviously they don't make up the largest proportion of our new intake of students, but the digital literacy skills there can be a real issue. I think with young people, there is this thing about digital natives, and when I've spoken to students about whether they found it difficult to learn how to use platforms, on the whole, they've actually said no, they found it really easy. They sort of didn't really understand why I was asking them the question. And so I think the stereotype is true to an extent, but where you've got those students who are completely disengaged from the online learning because they don't have the physical access, they don't have the infrastructure, they're not going to be getting that learning experience. And those who are, a significant number of them are doing this on phones. So although they find it easy to use on a phone, the things that we might want them to do when they come to university, it may not be possible to do on the devices that they're using. So there may be a bit of a jump and a bit of learning that they need to do in terms of adapting to that.
I think that also covers kind of the design of technologies, or the design of the materials that you're going to give them, doesn't it? It's I think when we create materials for our Moodle modules, sometimes it might be worth thinking about, how's this going to look on a mobile phone or something like that. Sometimes screens can resize and things like that. So I think it's certainly important to consider that. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, we've been sort of testing everything on mobiles as well, because that, especially during the first lockdown when students were not in school, that was the main way that they were accessing materials, and that was kind of what our research was showing us, that that was happening. So I think it is important to consider that, and even just simple things like how much text there is and how busy it is, and things like that. And that will apply, I guess, to our students as well once they get to university.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And you also both get a gold star for being on time as well. So thank you very much.